All right, I know it's Eagles Super Bowl week, but you know what? It is also NBA trade deadline. The Sixers are in the heart, the meat of a really, really long NBA schedule. So we're going to talk a little Sixers to start today. We got my man Josh Reynolds from That's Ball, folks, join us. Trending in the AM. It starts in 30 seconds.
Holding, gets around in front. Embiid, and Philadelphia has it.
And a very good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. We're live, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know the drill. Like, share, retweet, follow on all social media platforms. But if you want to get interactive with the show, head over to the DSM Media YouTube page, hit the like and the subscribe button, turn your notifications on, but that is the best place to drop your questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, whatever it may be. That's the place to do it. I am your host, Phil Stifel. Find me on Twitter at Beard of Knowledge. And we got my man Josh Reynolds at Josh Reynolds 24. That's Ball, folks, podcast, Sixers, covering them on a regular basis. They're one of the best out there on the platforms covering them. Good morning, Josh. Thanks for waking up this morning with me.
Of course, Phil, you're the man. I genuinely appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, come on now. I mean, you said that in the when I asked you to come on, you're like, yeah, that's an honor that you. No, it's not an honor to come on my podcast. It's just
it is, man.
It's kind of just a requirement that I beg everybody at some point in time to come on.
No way. I legit mean it. Yeah, I'm very, very excited to chat some Sixers hoop with you this morning.
Well, awesome. So, Mark jumping in already. Bad Sixers lost last night. Can't be up 21 and lose. Yes, Kyle, I know it is Super Bowl week, but you know what? We do got to talk a little bit of Sixers as well this week, with the NBA trade deadline happening, my man. But we will. At the end of the time with Josh, I will get Josh's thoughts on the Eagles and the Super Bowl as well. So hang in there with that. Obviously, like Mark said, he's already jumping in with the don't trade Matisse. We'll get to the trade deadline. I know. Mark has a huge fascination with Matisse. We'll get there, Mark. Last night, tough loss, 108-97 to the Knicks. And Josh, we were talking for a second before we went live here that I'm not as overly positive because we've been burned by this team so many times over the last few years. Last night's loss kind of just encapsulates why I have that gut feeling in my stomach that this team is different, but it's not different. We've seen this story before, the mid-season success. So, last night's game specifically, but generally speaking, how are you feeling at this moment about the Sixers team a few days before the deadline?
So I actually have felt really good. Obviously, the nice little stretch we've been on, it helps. What was it? Over the last 27 games, we've won 22 of them. So it's like, okay, you only feel good about that. I really like how you worded that. Like, this team is different, but at the same time, not really. It's hard. It's hard to get over the hump of what we've seen and what we've been through the last few years. Exactly like you said, where it's like, okay, each team over the last 3-4 years has showed little glimpses of like, oh, wow, this team might be different. This might be the team. And then it comes down to crunch time when we actually have to prove it and something happens. And whether that's some fluky thing like Embiid getting hurt, which it bless his heart, it seems like every playoff run where we're finally the ball's rolling, some crazy fluke injury happens and the dude has to play through it. That's just part of the game, whatever it is. But this team I felt really good about, but last night is the perfect example, like you said, of can this team actually get over the hump? And as our guy mentioned in the comments there, you can't blow a 21-point lead. And
that's two of the last 4 games that they've blown big leads. Yeah. The Magic loss, and that Mark was at. He was bragging about going to it on this show, and then he goes and he blows it, and then last night. The thing is, I kind of feel like, Josh, and I don't know if this is kind of crazy thought, that at this point of the season, we're well past the halfway point at this point. There's still no real identity with this team. And they kind of still are trying to feel, you have Joel, you have James Harden, but you're still trying to figure out your rotations, your bench pieces, who's going where and here and there. And I feel like that's the problem. There is no identity. Nobody knows what their role is yet at this point outside of Joel Embiid and James Harden. And I still think even them, they're still trying to figure out their role together. And I kind of feel like we should have a better idea at this point.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think injuries play a huge part in that. Obviously, this whole team with Embiid getting hurt and going through his rehab, Harden, same deal. Now Maxi's kind of in the thick of that. It's a little tough, kind of figuring out that rotation. For the simple fact that it's like Maxi shouldn't be coming off the bench, but he is right now. So it's like, okay, great. Like we understand that, but you look at the rest of the bench last night. I mean, it is atrocious. Yeah, just reading off some of the plus minuses because it was like head scratching. There was a stretch there where we had a lead and Montrezl Harrell, bless his heart, comes in and it was like a -15 in the 3-minute stretch that he played. And that's brutal. But to just go over some of these, Niang was a -20, Paul Reed a -14, Harrell -15, Maxey was a -23, Thibault at 17, and Shake was a -26. Like that's insane. Obviously, last night is kind of an outlier because honestly, up until last night, the bench unit has kind of looked decent. Again, that is in large part because Maxey's been coming off the bench and doing his thing, which has been great, which is not an easy thing to do, by the way. To be a guy, especially rehabbing from an injury, and all of a sudden you're like, yo, I'm back, I'm feeling good. And then you're asked to continue to come off the bench. That's not an easy role to accept, but obviously Maxey, just the happiest dude who's maybe ever played basketball, just accepts it and he's like, great. But yeah, I'm with you, Phil. Like it's hard to see what this rotation is going to look like come playoff time, only because we don't know. Like straight up, it's you can blame Doc, you can blame injuries. I think it's a combo of the both.
Well, we never have problem blaming Doc on this show. We never, hell, we weren't calling him Doc for 6 months. It was just Glenn. It was just Glenn Rivers. So you bring up Maxey, and let's talk about Tyrese Maxey a little bit because I've talked about it on the show a bunch that I wasn't sure. I wasn't ready to buy into Maxey, the bench player, but I was also willing to give it time. But now we're what, 6, 8 games into him being a bench guy. You've seen 2 or 3 times where he's played pretty well off the bench. You've also seen him struggle to get into the flow of the game coming off the bench. Yeah. But I was willing to give it time as long as Tyrese Maxey was on the floor the last 5, 6 minutes of the game. Last night I'm looking at it was about 2.5 minutes left in the game. I'm looking. We're not being able to come back in this game, and Maxey's on the bench. I think like 90 seconds left in the game, they put him back in, but at that point it was pretty much already over. Yeah. Like, if you're going to use Maxey on the bench, first and foremost, he still has to hit that 30-minute plateau every single game. Secondly, he better well be on the floor at the end. And if not, that's Doc screwing up this rotation again.
Correct. I completely agree with you. It was a little head scratching. Yes, he struggled last night, so I get it. But you're right. There's no reason that Maxey should not at least play 30 minutes. There's no reason that he shouldn't be in at the end of the game closing things. Like straight up. That's who he is. He's good enough. He's proven it to us. He deserves that. Obviously, like you said, it's been roughly 6, 8-ish games of him coming off the bench. But straight up, I fully expect him to be in that closing role come playoff time. He better be, or we're in a lot of trouble. And that's not a knock against Melton because Melton's been great. But Melton is the guy for what he is. And we know what Maxey can do. Melton provides a little bit more defense, obviously, kind of being a longer defender, kind of a ball hawk guy, which Maxey just doesn't have. But you look at the offensive side of the ball, and yeah, Melton's been able to knock down some open threes. That's great. Catch and shoot guy. Max is a creator straight up, and we need that, especially towards the end of the game when things get stagnant. And we already know come playoff time, that double team is coming Joel's way. And we need another guy like Harden, who is Maxey, who can create his own shot.
And I've always talked about some guys just mentally speaking struggle to get into the flow of the game if they're starting, whether they're starting or coming off the bench. And I've always struggled with Maxey on the court with James Harden and Joel Embiid early because you're trying to get Joel going early every single game. That's the thing. And that kind of hampers Maxey. But all of a sudden, since he's been coming off the bench, in theory, then he should do better off the bench, but it's not working for him, in my opinion. He kind of needs to be in that flow. Even if he's not physically involved in the offense at first, he needs to be in the flow of the game early. Or he just, I don't know, it just seems way too often it's taking him too long to get going coming off that bench. And when you come off the bench, you've got to score instantly. You're expected to be ready to go right away.
Yep, you're exactly right. That whole microwave thing, right? You got to be hot the second you step on the floor. And I like that. I like what you said because clearly this team's identity is Joel Embiid, and it should be offensively. So you're exactly right. Get him the ball early and often, but it's hard. As I mentioned, like again, credit to Maxey for even being happy to try this, but you have to get into the flow of things much, much quicker when you come off the bench. And again, come playoff time, I don't expect this to happen. But that's come playoff time. Like
Yeah.
we're approaching All-Star break. We're going to need to get the ball rolling before we get there, because you're not just going to hit playoff time and all of a sudden, hey, the ball's rolling. Let's figure out our rotations. That's not the way it works. So the best teams peak at the right time, and let's just hope that what we've seen over the last 27 games or so is just the tip of the iceberg. But I don't know, man. We're going to talk about it in a little bit, but I think that there's a couple big things, a couple glaring things that this team needs to identify and take care of come trade deadline on Thursday.
We're 52 games in the season. There's 30 games left, and this schedule. Obviously, we played really well the last 27 or so games, but it was kind of like the easier part of our schedule, in my opinion. You got a lot of tough games, and we're still trying to figure this flow out. Maxey learning how to be a bench player when we're going up against the Milwaukees, the Bostons. Boston's our next game on Thursday or Wednesday. So, it's a lot harder to try to adjust and learn on the fly when you're going to go up against these tough people. I'm not saying bag the idea altogether yet, but I don't know if this doesn't go well much longer, you might have to try some different configurations. And didn't Doc say we have a couple different starting configurations we want to try? He tried the Maxey on the bench, but he hasn't moved away from that yet. So I don't know where to go, but it's going to get really tough these next couple of weeks with the games that are coming up.
It is. I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of sticks with this all the way through All-Star break. And honestly, kind of rightfully so. Like, if you can, ideally on paper, this is a home run. If Maxey can hit his stride coming off the bench, then it's a no-brainer to me. I think everybody would agree with that. But it's not kind of taking form like it should, at least to this point. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is kind of what Doc rolls with up until All-Star break. And again, if Maxey can even encapsulate and capture just a little bit of that, then great. That's exactly what we need, and we can roll with that once we come out of the All-Star gate. But yeah, I'm with you. It's there was a comment too that's like, hey, we're still one of the best teams in the league despite all of this. There you go. Yeah. And that's amazing. That's a testament to the talent and the depth that we have on this roster. But everybody knows come playoff time that rotation shortens. You're not playing all these guys. These dudes aren't getting minutes. And again, we'll talk about the deadline here in a second, but I fully expect that rotation to shorten up to maybe 8 guys, possibly, depending on who we can pick up.
Doc last year was rolling 9-10 guys out in the playoff some games because that's Doc does complete opposite of what everyone assumes.
He does. I swear there are times where I'm like, okay, that dude for sure has a burner account and gets on Twitter and just reads everybody's comments and just does things in spite of everybody. But
I'm pretty sure some of my Glenn, you've lost the name Doc Rivers comments I made have been commented on by his burner account. I'm pretty sure about that.
Yeah, I would not be shocked about that. But yeah, again, I don't even want to dwell on the loss last night too much. But again, looking back, it might just be one of those regular season games where it's like, yeah, we blew that lead, but hey, it didn't really mean much. But it's again, it's frustrating. You absolutely cannot at this point with Maxey playing like he is coming out of his rehab. You can't roll out all bench minutes. Like we've said it so many times during the season. You would think that he would learn from every single time this happens. And again, it feels funny because Doc was, again, coach of the month in January. And I think all of us kind of gave him his flowers because we've been on a roll. But at the same time, it's like, dude, when are you going to learn? You've got to learn from what has happened over and over and over. The second Embiid steps off the floor, it's a nightmare. Absolute nightmare. Defensively, offense is stagnant. Look, Harden's been playing really nice. Last night, he just didn't have it going. So it's tough, but you cannot roll out all bench minutes. It's painful.
Well, the trade deadline is coming up, and kind of to segue, start with another player that, my man Mark, who loves, commenting here, Matisse stuff all the time. Talking about Matisse's role on this team, but also because he's one of the names that's rumors are flying rampant around. Yeah. I kind of feel like the last couple of weeks, Matisse has actually played. I know the box score, the plus minus didn't show it last night, but Doc, for actually one player, has given finally a consistent role. He's coming in with 5 minutes there at the end of the first, into the second, same thing in the third, 5-6 minutes, end of the third, into the fourth. And I kind of feel like now that he's got a defined role, Matisse is, playing a little bit more consistently and actually showing what he's capable of. Before the deadline, would you even consider moving Matisse at this point? Or I mean, I know he's your best asset that's tradable, really, but
Yeah.
is moving on from Matisse really going to be the right move? Because it does seem like we're trying.
Yeah, it seems like Matisse's time in Philly is coming to an end, sadly. I honestly I'm surprised because it feels like his name was floated around in like the Ben Simmons trade when we were trying to get Harden, and people didn't want, us included, didn't want to include Matisse. So
Mhm.
it's like, okay, great. We hold him at this standard. It's great. We know what he is defensively. That's not even a question. But then it's like, okay, how do we get him the appropriate amount of minutes to
Mhm.
show off that defensive ability that he's got? Because on the offensive side, he is what he is at this point,
Yeah.
right? He wasn't a one and done guy in college. He played many years in college, and then he's been in the league now for what, 4 years? Like,
Mhm.
he has just showed he's not making any progress, especially from shooting from the 3-point line. And that's brutal. That is the correct comment right there. If they're not
Yeah.
going to extend him, you got to move him. And I think that's what's going to happen right here. At
Mhm.
this deadline, Philly is handcuffed, straight up. We're handcuffed.
Mhm.
Where Daryl is the guy to do it because he's a wizard with this stuff, but it is very, very tight salary wise. So I do not believe that we are going to be the team who extends Matisse. So I
Mhm.
think that is why that his name has popped up so many times. And the names of the teams that have been tied with him have been interesting. The
Mhm.
team that came up this week was Atlanta. Like, I'm
Yep.
not exactly sure what Atlanta has to offer unless it's some type of 3-team deal. Or I would be shocked if we're taking back draft capital since we're in this win now window. But then Sacramento obviously makes sense. They've got a bunch of young pieces, which, by the way, they're probably the funnest story in the entire league this year.
Yep.
I love them, but yeah, I don't know. This Matisse situation honestly bums me out because I love the dude. I've
Yeah.
loved what he
And
showed.
that's kind of how I'm feeling. Like, I love the dude, and I want to see. And he's never gotten the
No,
fair shake time. Like, we talk about Doc, whether he develops players or not on the show. He's obviously developed Maxi and helped take Maxi's career, but he's also stunted the growth of people. Paul
yep,
Reed, whether you're a Paul Reed fan or not, and Matisse. I mean, Matisse has not really gotten the fair shake to really truly develop.
yeah,
And it's a shame because
yep,
I really do think that he could have been, if developed properly in the right situation, a guy starting or coming off the bench playing 20, 25 minutes in that. I don't want to call it the Robert Covington role because I think he's never going to be the shooter Robert Covington was, but
that
borderline
type of
for
role.
that
Yeah, yeah.
that type of role. You know what I mean? So I think he's gotten an unfair shake here, and he might actually flourish if he goes to another team in the right situation.
You're exactly right. Like, can't you already picture him in a Sacramento Kings jersey, just running around the court, playing a
Yeah,
ton of minutes, and actually like hitting open threes? Like, I can see that. I can see that happening.
I can
And
too.
honestly, I can like already picture him in a Kings jersey. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, he just has never taken that step. Every offseason, we're like, okay, Matisse is a freak defensively, but the dude's just got to be consistent from three. He's got to show some progress. And he hasn't. He hasn't at this point in his career. And so it's kind of easy to accept the fact that it's like, great, he's not going to be that dude who ever flirts with even upper 30s from the 3-point line. That's not going to be him. And come playoff time, like, especially as we mentioned earlier, Joel's going to get doubled. We know that's going to happen every single play down. So you have to space the floor with shooters. But that's the hard part. I think that it's we're more open to moving, or at least the idea of moving Matisse, because we do have the Anthony Melton who can play that. Hey, he's the defensive lockdown guy, at least on the wing. And guess what? He can actually knock down open threes. So I think he's stepped into that Matisse role, at least taking the bulk of those minutes. He's done a really good job with it. But again, as that comment mentioned, I don't think we're going to extend him, which is why his name is floated around so much with these rumors.
So, I mean, most of the rumors of players going out of Philly, it's Matisse, obviously. It's Furkan and Jaden Springer because of financial aspects. I joked about it about a week ago on this show. I said over under 1.5 trades that the Sixers making. I think it's going to be the over
Yeah.
because you're going to see a Matisse move. You're going to see these bench pieces move that are on the back end of the rotation. But moving these players also means we have to bring guys back.
Yep.
We're moving guys that are either barely in the rotation or not in the rotation to kind of bulk up this team. And I know you already made one comment about Trez. Is the backup center position or is another shooter off the bench? What do you feel is the more important thing for this team to bring in as we're moving these pieces?
I 100% think it's a backup big.
Yeah.
Obviously, it would be nice to kind of replace and get a shooter coming off the bench. But as we as we mentioned, the rotation should ideally get shorter come playoff time, even though that maybe that's not been the case with Doc's lineups. But I am all on board to get Joel a backup. And a couple names that I absolutely love and that have kind of been thrown out there. The first being Andre Drummond. If we can go into Chicago and get Drummond back and bring him back to Philly, that's an absolute home run. I've said it. I am very outspoken about this, but Andre Drummond has been Embiid's best backup that Embiid's ever had in his entire career, and I don't think it's close. So if you can even soften those minutes that Embiid's on the off the floor with a dude like Drummond, that's a huge win. Absolutely, just massive win. Again, you can look at the entire season. You can look at this for the last. You can look at it all of Joel Embiid's career. That the second he goes off the floor, the Sixers team just plummets, and you just have to soften that. You have to soften that blow a little bit. So if I'm big Drummond guy,
so I'm not a big NBA trade machine guy. You know, because everybody becomes a GM and posts their stuff all over the place. But it is good to figure out values on what it would take and stuff. So what would it take to get Drummond from Chicago? Because
that's
is it going to take a piece and something else to because they know we need Drummond. So
that's the thing. So yeah, it's all obviously going to fall on Chicago and what they want to give up because it's going to be giving up multiple things. There's no way we can roll in again. If somehow Daryl can work his magic and we can get out kind of unscathed, then great, home run. But I still think it's a home run, even if you have to include multiple things, whether that is draft asset, kind of capital, or we just give up pieces. And I think I'm obviously leaning more towards the pieces side because we're a little thin on the draft capital side, which is tough. So, but again, this deadline is going to be so interesting because we are handcuffed. Like I said, Daryl's going to have to pull off a couple miracles, and I think Drummond would be the biggest one of them all.
I almost feel like this trade deadline is more important to the Sixers organization than last year. I know last year involved the James Harden trade, but we knew a big trade was coming because we had the Ben Simmons thing hanging over our head. There's no way that was going to drag on past the deadline. That was big. But this year is the year that you're all in. You're third in the conference. You're 2.5 games back. Theoretically speaking, this is your all-in opportunity. So this is almost a more important moment for Daryl Morey. And I talked about it before this season. This season is the Daryl Morey and James Harden legacy season because they're coming towards the point where they've been hyped up as these legends and they haven't won anything yet. So on the Daryl Morey side, this is a very important, whether it's Andre Drummond. I know Nerlens Noel's name's been thrown around a lot as a backup big. It's a big moment for him.
It's a huge moment for him. You nailed it. I agree with you that this offseason kind of has this offseason could, I don't want to say make or break, but kind of, right? Because it's like you go out and get James Harden last year for a window like this. And I'm not trying to be negative or pessimistic, but I think we all agree that this little championship window isn't big. Like we've got a couple years, especially with Harden getting older and our roster just getting older and Embiid's injury history. Like we need to take advantage of it right now. So I completely agree. You got to go out and you've put this roster together. It's been great. You can't argue about the talent that's on paper. That's awesome. But now you got to go solidify it and you got to bring in some backups. You mentioned Nerlens. There have been a couple things that I'm hearing as well about him not even being a trade candidate, but maybe being one of those guys that we bring in off a buyout, which would be also huge. Again, as I mentioned 100 times, it sounds like a broken record. We're handcuffed, so we got to get creative. And bringing in Nerlens on just an even tiny minimum deal out of a buyout just to finish this regular season and make a good actual title run, I think would be very beneficial and something that is extremely appealing to him. Get him out of his current situation. So
I was going to say, again, I'm not a numbers guy. I'm not a cap guy. I know we're right up against the wall there. Is there room for the Sixers to bring in if the trade deadline doesn't go as planned? Is there still room for buyout market guys?
Yeah, there is. Not a lot of it. We have one roster spot open right now, and it would have to be for a minimum deal. But again, I think at this point in Nerlens' career, he might even take kind of the Drummond approach, right? I think we were all shocked when we signed Andre Drummond, who has been the center that Embiid's gone head-to-head with. All of a sudden, he's willing to accept a role coming off the bench. It was awesome to see, but I think Nerlens at this point in his career especially would be open to that. And we know what he is. He's a great rim protector. He's awesome. He's not going to be an offensive threat, but hey, that's great. Just hold down the fort until Embiid comes back and do your thing. So yeah, it's going to be tight, but we are in kind of that realm of we can bring in some buyout guys.
Yeah. All right. So obviously you got the big men. any other names, rumors? I mean, there's boatloads of them floating around.
Yeah.
If it's not a big, or if it's not, Drummond or Nerlens Noel, is there another name or two, or another theory in a direction they should be going to maximize this window this year?
Yes. So another name that has been floated around a lot, who I also am big on, is Jared Vanderbilt out of Utah.
Heard a lot about him, yep.
So he is an undersized big 6'9" guy. I'm not gonna lie, I haven't been too thrilled and impressed with what he has brought the Jazz. But that said, he is in a bigger role than what he is capable of right now in Utah as they're trying to figure things out. He would be a name that you could bring in and kind of come off the bench in that smaller, but you could still throw him in the backup 5 role. He would fit seamlessly. He would be excellent. So that's another name that I like to kind of keep my eye on. I am hearing things though, especially yesterday, that this was floated around a lot on Twitter. And then my source was like, "Hey, like, just so you know, like it's chilling out a bit. Utah knows what they have. Credit to everything Utah's doing. They have put themselves in a really good position for the future. But they know what they've got in guys like Vanderbilt and Beasley. So I don't think they're in too big of a rush or hurry because there's going to be multiple teams trying to land this dude. But he is somebody as well. If we could bring him in, he's not a Nerlens, he's not a Drummond, he's not a big like them, but he is a dude who could still come off the bench and give us actual meaningful minutes come playoff time. So keep an eye on Vanderbilt.
I heard his name a lot, and I won't lie, I don't watch a lot of Utah Jazz basketball, so I really don't know a hell of a lot about him.
Yeah.
But from his stats, his size, and everything, I'm like, is he just like a slightly better Paul Reed, the undersized guy that maybe he's just a better version of Paul Reed, just without the fan base excitement behind him.
That's a good way to put it. He's worse offensively, but a better defensive. He's better defensively than Paul Reed, which again, I mean, you just got to kind of pick and choose what's more important to you. And I think we love Paul Reed. All of us do. But I think he's shown us.
He's the Paul Turner of the Sixers, man.
The
guy that flashes in preseason and camp and one or two moments. And I mean, I don't know if it's Doc's fault that he hasn't developed any further, or maybe he's just limited talent wise. I don't get Paul Reed hyped like everybody.
Yeah, I'm with you at least as far as the defensive side of the ball. Like he's not the answer. Like we know that, and so being able to kind of, I don't want to say move on, but almost do that because again, like I think every single Philly fan would agree, we need to do whatever it takes. Put aside these like Paul Reed fan club and just biases aside, whatever we can do to capitalize on this championship little window, we have to do. Everybody agrees with that. That's the main goal, right? Is to win a championship. So
are there any shooters, I mean, that are available that we could afford? Because going back to last night's game, obviously George Niang he's our number one sniper off the bench. But when he has a bad game or is off like he was last night, he's just got to keep shooting. You know what I mean? He's the only option we have. We do need another guy that when Yang's off, we could slide him in instead. But I don't see as many of those rumors floating around.
Nope, no, none of them. It's been dead cold. There's one name that I was told, but this was a few weeks ago, is Doug McDermott from San Antonio. Yeah. Kind of a bigger guy, but a knockdown shooter. And he's kind of played this role in San Antonio where it's like, okay, are you actually decent or are you just getting these numbers because you're on a terrible team? Yeah. So that's still to be determined, but that is one name that I've heard floated around a little bit. He is I don't want to say the only one, but there is not a lot of talk at all. Okay. And typically this point where we're a few days out from the deadline, we're at least hearing names, right? And so that's been a little bit alarming. But again, this could be something that come the buyout market, there is a shooter. If you remember a few seasons ago when Bellinelli from Atlanta got bought out, and it was like, great, let's bring Ilyasova and Bellinelli in. And it was awesome. It was amazing. That's probably the best buyout season that we've ever had. So there's not going to be dudes of that caliber this year that we can make a run at. But if we don't make a move for a shooter come deadline, then I would fully expect us to do something in the buyout market come that time.
So real quick, obviously the trade deadline already started with the big move this weekend. Obviously Friday afternoon, the news came out of nowhere that Kyrie Irving wanted out of Brooklyn. And I thought this was going to drag to Thursday at, 10 minutes before the deadline. But was it Saturday or yesterday? The move got made to Dallas. And it kind of shook me that it happened so quickly because I didn't even fully digest him wanting out of Brooklyn and that disaster. And it's a big impact on the Sixers and the whole Eastern Conference. Kyrie leaving Brooklyn and going to the Western Conference. First off, Kyrie, thoughts on him as a whole, and him just again. Would you even want him on your team?
No.
You want him part of That's Ball, folks? Because I mean, I wouldn't want him part of the morning show here because I know he would flake out on me at some point in time.
Yep. No shot. I said before the season even started and all the hoopla and just absolute madness and nightmare that came with him this year, I said I wouldn't even touch him with a 50-foot pole before the season started. He's the dude who could just decide to retire one day when he wakes up. I'm not a Kyrie guy, and all of his antics and stuff just kind of cement that for me. Look, there's no denying what he can do on the court. He's an unbelievable talent when he is on the court. When he's off the court, he is an unbelievable distraction. He's an unbelievable nightmare. He's a bad teammate. He's selfish. Like, I could go on days and days and days, but you look at his track record of his whole career and he's shown us who he is. So it's like, at some point, everybody needs to step back and accept it. Like, this is who he is. It's part of it. And clearly Dallas did, because otherwise they're not making this.
Say that Dallas trade. I mean, he's basically a rental because he's a free agent at the end of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't give up a whole hell of a lot. They gave up a future first round, Spencer Dinwiddie. I mean, they didn't give up a whole lot. It might make Dallas a little bit better in the short term, but I think the bigger aspect of this whole trade is what does it do for Brooklyn?
Yep.
Because Brooklyn, they've kind of been, slipping a little bit with Durant being injured, but Durant's supposed to be back soon.
Yeah.
Now Durant's stuck on a team with Ben Simmons that you don't know what's going on there, Spencer Dinwiddie, and a bunch of other players. Is Brooklyn going to? I saw one of the sports books actually put minus odds on Kevin Durant getting traded by Thursday now because of this whole Kyrie thing. Is Brooklyn going to just pack it in and blow it up now? Then they go on and win this weekend, without anybody, and then they go out and win this weekend. So
I know, go figure. It's going to be really interesting to see, especially with the Kyrie news and the report that KD was even caught off guard by it. Like, typical Kyrie fashion, right? Just right after they end this big win streak and they're actually playing good basketball. I wouldn't be surprised if KD's on the move, honestly. You look at all the teams that made an offer for Kyrie because they all started leaking yesterday. The Lakers offer was a good one. Phoenix's offer was probably the most intriguing and makes you think, okay, if they're not taking the deal for Jay Crowder, Chris Paul, and picks, then they're clearly not. I mean, Chris Paul is a win now guy. And if Chris Paul and KD are somewhat boys, if they're not taking that, then it kind of leads you to think, okay, maybe they are looking to pack it in and kind of just build off of what they've got for the future. Because again, Finney Smith is a good piece. He showed last year during their playoff run that he is a piece that is a good piece. I would take him on the Sixers in 2 seconds.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't leave his name out. I was just like, it's not like they got big names in Spencer Dinwiddie and Finney Smith. They're role guys that play their role to a perfection to an extent.
Yep, you're exactly right. And you mentioned it as well. Like, Kyrie's stock has just plummeted. It's gone down. You look at what Rudy Gobert got in all those first round picks. Then you look at what Kyrie Irving got, and there's one 2029 future first. Like, that's crazy to me. But again, I don't blame any team for not wanting to just go full board and send it all in for Kyrie. Because like you mentioned, this could be a rental. This could be an absolute nightmare for Dallas. But in Dallas's credit, they had to take advantage of this Luka window and keep him happy. I mean, Luka's playing some of the best basketball that we've ever seen. And without Luka, I mean, just being frank, Dallas is most likely a lottery team. Like, they're not great. And so being able to kind of, hey, show Luka, like, look, we're willing to make you happy. We're willing to get you help. They made a little move for Christian Wood, who I think is underrated, but that was a decent move for them this offseason. So now to bring in Kyrie, I think their depth is going to be the huge question mark, because now they're going to be forced to play dudes who haven't gotten minutes because you get rid of those two key pieces off the bench and Dinwiddie and Finney Smith. But I'm with you. I was shocked this happened so fast. I didn't think, honestly, it's Kyrie, right? So I'm like, okay, it's either going to wait until the deadline comes, or he's not even going to get moved and they're just going to call his bluff. But yeah, it moved very, very quickly, and I'm shocked. But good for Dallas, at least for trying.
I mean, they never go against going all in. A team wants to maximize that window. Look, the Western Conference, in my opinion, is even. I mean, I think the East, it's pretty much the Sixers, the Celtics, the Bucks. No one else really stands a chance. In the West, I think there's a good 4, 5, 6 teams. I mean, and you tell me anybody's super confident in the Kings at the number 3 spot coming out. It's an open window. Golden State obviously has the Curry injury again.
Yeah.
Phoenix has been really all over the place this year. It's an all-in move when your window. I talk about it in all sports on this show. Timing in sports and making moves is so critical. You don't go all in when you have no chance. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And Dallas has a chance, and this is an all-in move. And I was asking about the Nets and blowing it up because obviously, Mark popped go get Seth Curry back on this team, and they do
Would
have
love
Seth
that.
Curry and Joe Harris. If they're blowing things up in Brooklyn, maybe they would move one of those guys. I doubt that they would deal with Daryl Morey again after we
Yeah.
dumped Ben Simmons on them. But you know, Dallas will make some more moves. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Brooklyn. I mean, they're going to fall from that number 4 spot pretty
Oh,
quickly.
yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of moves happening on that roster there.
Yep, I agree. I will be shocked if KD moves this deadline. To be honest, I just think it all happened too quickly. KD is a guy who especially if he hasn't requested a trade, like he's a guy it takes a while to build framework on because, again, if he's locked in, so that's going to be even bigger than a Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell type haul that you get for KD, and rightfully so. He's one of the best scorers that we've ever seen. So I don't see him moving this deadline. It would be amazing. I love action at the deadline. Absolutely love it. I don't care if it's just Sixers or if it's the whole league. I love it all.
I love the NBA countdown show. Like
Yeah.
on the trade deadline day. Even the super cheesy when they used to have the explosion thing. Dude,
Yeah,
I love the fact that the deadline hits and then more moves just keep rolling in off after the deadline. Dude,
Yeah.
it's must-see TV for me.
Oh, it's the best. Everybody says it, but truly, there's no better reality TV show than the NBA. But between the fights, between everything Kyrie offers, like you never know what's going to happen. And I'm right there with you. The deadline and deadline week only makes it a million times better. But
I mean, it's WrestleMania season, and the fights are rolling in the NBA every single day right now at this point.
I don't know what's going on, man. Something in the water, but it's crazy. Honestly, it's fun. It's fun to see. Obviously, you don't want to see like Dylan Brooks cheap shot a guy and just punch him in the groin. That's terrible. I hate Dylan Brooks, but and again, you don't want to see a dude like Austin Rivers just go up to a dude on the bench, and that was an actual fight. They both got punches in, but it makes for it brings back a little of the nostalgia. Like I'm a 90s kid, right? So even early 90s basketball was physical. Obviously, it was nothing compared to like the Bad Boys Pistons and things like
You're a
that.
90s kid. How old are you?
I am 31.
Okay, so you're still okay. So you're not a real 90s. See, I was in high school in the 90s.
Oh,
so
yeah. Okay.
I'm a real 90s kid.
Yeah. When I say kid, I mean actual kid. I was like 5. But yeah, I look like I'm 14. That's the only reason I've got this joke of facial hair.
I would look. I'm in my 40s, but I would look 14 without the beard. So that's the real reason with the beard.
I'm jealous of the beard, man. That's good growth. I got nothing.
So all right. So the deadline's Thursday. We got a game Wednesday against the Celtics. The deadline comes. The deadline goes. Your best gut feeling. What's the Sixers roster look like at 6:00 on Thursday night?
I think, like you mentioned, you talked about him earlier. Furkan, I think he's gonzo. And honestly, like good for Furkan. He's stuck around for a long time. Put him in some type of position where he can play and show what he can do. That's great. He deserves that. I think he's off the squad. I don't know how to feel about Springer. Like there are a lot of people who are high on him who watch a bunch of the Delaware Bluecoats G League ball, and they really like what he offers. It's too early for me to be able to make a determination on him. But on our roster, there's not a spot for him, straight up. So if we move away,
for 2 or 3
for a long
years.
time. Yep, exactly. And so it's like, okay, if we move on from him, I won't be shocked. But I fully expect us to have a backup big, 100%. I think it will be, even if, I mean, again, we floated the idea of Nerlens as a buyout big. I think we still make a move at the deadline for a backup big. And if we don't, I think it's a big miss. And that's not just saying Drummond or Vanderbilt. I know Naz Reid was talked about as well, but he's way harder to work with salary. But if we don't get a backup big by Thursday, I think it's a big miss. But I fully expect, again, like this is what Daryl does, right? Like there's certain GMs in the league who have the reputation because of their track record. And that's what Daryl does. He's the guy who swindles teams and brings in the Seth Currys for a pick or DeAnthony Melton for a pick. Like that's what he does. So I fully expect Daryl to do his thing. And I think that we're going to be better. And that's not just being me, Homer, with my Sixers hat on. I think we're going to be better come Thursday.
Yeah, that's always the problem. Sounding like a homer. So
Yep.
sound not like a homer. The trade deadline comes and goes. We get Andre Drummond or Noel in here. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe they find another shooter off the bench, whatever, or they don't. We just roll with this. Come playoff time.
Yep.
How are you going to be feeling? What is, in your opinion, the max that this team can max out at?
Man,
Do you think they can win the East if they add an Andre Drummond and make those minor tweaks to the roster? Can they win the Eastern Conference, this team?
Man, I hope, because if you can't, if you fix the biggest glaring problem that this roster has and you can't win the East, that's the most deflating thing in the world, because what else do you do? Like truly. So I as a homer like to think, but me as just a basketball fan, if they can make it past that second round hurdle and get to the conference finals, then it will be a little glimpse for me to be like, wow, okay, this team is different.
Mhm.
And then anything past that will just be surprising. Truly. Again,
If they do not, if they say they get to the Eastern Conference Finals and they lose to
yeah,
the Celtics, just say, I've been saying it all year that this could probably be Doc Rivers' last year.
yeah.
And I don't even know if getting to the conference finals, in my opinion, saves Doc Rivers', career in Philadelphia.
I agree. I'm right there with you.
I think it has to
This
be a
team
finals appearance.
it needs to be a title run. It needs to be a finals run. Even if I could see an instance where if we make it to the conference finals and it goes 6 or 7, then maybe he hangs on for the start of next year. But yeah, this is boom or bust, man, because again, this window is realistically 2 years, maybe. So again, that's what scares me so bad, is if we do fix this huge glaring issue as the backup big off the bench, and we can't make the hurdle and make the jump from there, it's the most deflating thing in the world, because this talent wise is probably, I mean, you look at that, obviously Jimmy Butler team with Redick and everybody, that's probably our best chance.
Camera, my computer shifted a little bit. My Butler jersey is still right there.
Okay, see, there it is.
I get a lot of crap. I still wear my Sixers Butler jersey out in public because
Good for you.
I'm still not over that move. My brother calls me a fugazi and every other word in the book, but I can't get over it. I still am not over that move.
Yeah, that squad, I think, was to this point our best chance of winning. I think everybody would agree with that. And we don't even need to talk about what happened, because I think about it probably every
my heart
day.
even bringing it up at this point.
I know it's
painful. Like a
painful.
lot of nightmares and all.
It's really awful. But compared to that team and that team aside, I think that this roster, as it's constructed, gives us the best chance to make actual run. So if you can't fix that issue, and if that's not the answer to get over the hurdle, I don't know what you do, man. That's the biggest deflating thing on the planet. So I like to think, though, again, every year it's the hope that kills you, and I'm full of hope. So we'll see.
That's why I'm trying not to let myself get another Jimmy Butler disappointment in my thing. All right, so speaking of disappointments, all right, we got Josh Reynolds from That's Ball's Life, or That's Ball Folks. Sorry, I keep messing that
You're good.
one up.
You're
Liberty
good.
Ballers, That's Ball Folks. There's another big game this week. Real quick, as I get you signed off here. How you talking about confidence with the Sixers? How confident are you in the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl Sunday against those Chiefs?
I'm confident, man. I feel good. I feel real good. Vibes around this whole team are just all-time high. Everything moving into this week is just great. I just love. I talk about it on my latest podcast episode, but how just the narrative around this Eagles team has changed so much from the beginning of the season, where it's like, it hurts the answer. We win a bunch of games, and it's like, oh, this team's for real. They're good. And then it changes to, oh, their schedule's so easy. Then we lose to Washington, and they're like, oh, they showed their true colors. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, this team's so good that me or you could coach the team. And Sirianni's not a good coach. It's like, what the hell, man? That's what happens when you've got good teams. And we're a good team. We're the best team, all around best team in the league. It's not even close. So I feel great. I think it's hilarious that people are trying to label and put all these different labels on this Eagles team. It's like, just appreciate it. Admit it. It's this Philly bias that, whether people want to admit or not, it's a real thing.
It's 100% a real thing. And, I think the Sixers have been the luckiest team in sports this year. First, they struggle earlier in the year. The Phillies go on a World Series run, masks those struggles. Now the Sixers are playing well, but it's being masked again by this Philadelphia Eagles. Nobody even knows what's going on with the Sixers till after. People were nuts. They're like, "You're gonna have a basketball conversation this week." I'm like, "Yeah, gotta have a basketball conversation on the show."
Deadline.
But the Eagles are in the Super Bowl. I mean, it doesn't get old. And I don't know about you, how long you've been podcasting and all, but this is my first like real run at a title since I've started doing this show, and it's very hard to have a very unbiased conversation with people. But it's the Eagles; they're in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
It's like, how do you handle that? Professionalism. There, I can't. I'm just giddy every single morning.
And honestly, you should be like
Yeah.
our teams in the Super Bowl. You deserve to be giddy. This is why we do this, right? And so, but it is like what an all-time year that we're potentially having.
Yeah.
You look at the Phillies. I don't know if you're a soccer guy. I'm not a huge soccer guy, but Union make a nice little run. The Sixers are playing well. Eagles are in the Super Bowl. It's like we're crossing all of this off. We just got to win one. So let's hope we do that. But
the Sixers put us in 4 teams playing for a title in the same
crazy.
year.
That's crazy.
That's insane to think. I love it.
Yeah.
All right,
it's
Josh,
wild.
Tell everybody where they can find your podcast and all the work you do and everything.
Absolutely. So follow me on Twitter at Josh Reynolds 24. My podcast, That's Ball, folks, part of the SB Nation umbrella and network. It's listen to it everywhere podcasts are available. But yeah, so if you're gonna do anything, just follow me on Twitter. I'm very active on there, and I like to chat it up with everybody.
I appreciate that. All right, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for waking up this morning. And a couple weeks, a month from now, we'll have to try to do this again as we get closer to the NBA playoffs and stuff like that.
Please, Phil, love being on, chatting with you. Looking forward to it, man. Let's go Birds.
Yeah, that's right. Go Birds. That's right. Thanks a lot. That was Josh Reynolds there. That's Ball, folks, podcast. A lot of great information from him there. I greatly appreciate his time right there, and definitely check out his podcast. Follow him on Twitter and all that great stuff. That's my time today. That's what we got today. Trending in the AM. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, following on all social media platforms, and we'll be back tomorrow. More Eagles talk. I got some reporters lined up this week. We'll confirm everything today, and I'll put out the schedule of guests this week later today. But everybody have a great day. And it is still Go Birds. Definitely still Go Birds.
And Philadelphia has it.